The annual Catholic Appeal, continuing the tradition of neighbor helping neighbor, responding to Pope Francis's call to serve with love, serving our brothers and sisters throughout life's journey, caring for the less fortunate, walking with those in need. Make your donation of time, talent, or treasure online at diospringfield.org and help us to help our neighbors in need. Support the annual Catholic Appeal.
Coming up on this special Easter edition of Reel to Reel, we revisit Jerusalem, the place where Holy Week began.
I'm Terry Hegarty. I'll be recalling the Boston Marathon bombings 1 year later, and I'll introduce you to 2 local therapy dogs who help people recover from emotional scars caused by trauma.
And in duet with God, one local musician's love of music and faith. These stories and more are just ahead on this edition of Reel to Reel from Mark Henry's in Indian Orchard.
From throughout Western New England and beyond, this is Reel to Reel, your window on the world around you. Here is your Reel to Reel host, Sharon Roulier.
Hello and welcome again to Reel on this Easter weekend. We come to you from Mark Henry Florist in the Indian Orchard section of Springfield, where the beauty of spring is definitely surrounding us today. As we celebrate this holiest of Christian days, we are reminded of the time that Christ spent in Jerusalem. Last year, we had Terry Hegarty preparing a very special segment for Holy Week using footage that was shot in Jerusalem as part of his trip to the Holy Land in 2012. The diocesan pilgrimage hosted more than 24 pilgrims as they visited some of the holiest sites in the world. We hope you enjoy this encore presentation from Jerusalem that retraces the final steps of Jesus' life on earth. Here's Terry's report.
As Holy Week begins, the pilgrims from the Diocese of Springfield who visited the Holy Land last fall will surely have a new appreciation of these holy days leading up to Easter. They've walked the streets that Jesus walked on his last days. They've been to the actual sites where Jesus triumphantly entered Jerusalem, and they've seen where his suffering took place. Pilgrims began on the Mount of Olives that rises to the east of the city of Jerusalem.
And the Lord Jesus was very active during the day, preaching, teaching.
Olive trees are still abundant on this land, and even those harvesting the olives are still plentiful. Father Gary Daly, the spiritual leader of the pilgrimage, says there were several stops on the tour that impressed him.
To be in the places where Jesus was and where his final moments here were during that week of the Passion and leading up to the resurrection. So overall, it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience.
While descending the Mount of Olives, pilgrims enjoyed a panoramic view of the Old City. They continued down the mountain along the pathway that Jesus used as he rode a borrowed donkey into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. Halfway down, they arrived at Dominus Flavus, where Jesus wept over the holy city. He foresaw the wounds that not only would be inflicted upon him, but upon the city. 30 years after Jesus' death, the Romans left Jerusalem in ruins.
Going back in history so far, and to be on the Mount of Olives, to be on the road where he rode the donkey into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, really means a lot.
Just nearby still stands the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus' passion began. Here he wept and prayed as he spent one last night with his apostles.
The people of Caiaphas went down here with torches and swords, like they went to capture a thief. And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth, where are you?" And the Lord stood here, and he said, "I am he."
Next, the group entered the Old City. They then embarked upon the Way of Sorrows. Of all the places in the Holy Land, walking the Via Dolorosa, or the Way of the Cross, is probably the closest thing to walking in the footsteps of Jesus. Here, he carried his own cross to his crucifixion. Many participants say that the experience has helped them to better understand the suffering of Jesus.
When we were going up the Via Dolorosa, both her and I were struggling going up, but I'm saying to myself, Jesus suffered a heck of a lot more than we did, even though I was struggling going up.
I was saying the same thing to myself. I was in so much pain, but I kept saying to myself, I've got to push through because Christ suffered far more than I'm suffering, and he did it.
The stations wind their way through the streets of the old city with plenty of steps and plenty of merchants. The prayerful piety that one may enjoy while participating in the Stations of the Cross in their church is not present here. The 9th station is just outside of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the holiest place in the world for Christians. The gray-domed structure has been built over the spots where it is believed that Jesus was crucified, died, was buried, and rose from the dead. The last 5 stations of the cross are within the church. Just inside the main doorway, pilgrims can venerate the stone of anointing where Jesus' body was prepared for burial.
One of the other places that had significant meaning for me was the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the Church of the Resurrection. To be there in the place of Golgotha, where Jesus died, where he shed his blood for us, and then where he was buried and where he resurrected, just had significant meaning for me.
That was a very moving experience, walking the Via Dolorosa, the way of sorrow and cross, up the steps through an Arab commercial area, stopping at the various stations of the cross, much like the ones we have in our churches, except this was a living experience, culminating in the Holy Sepulchre.
A 19th century aedicule has been built around what remains of the tomb of Jesus. Faithful wait in line, sometimes for hours, to enter and touch the shelf that was in the cave where the body of Jesus was placed.
The thing that I enjoyed most was the mental and the emotional experience that you feel when you visit the various sites. And I think, like some of the other things that really bring out, the sadness in looking at, the tomb and then taking that and walking to where he was crucified. You then, you feel that. You can really feel that. I think that's the basis of strengthening your faith.
A strengthening that will likely last for many years to come for participants, deepening their understanding of the Passion of the Lord and their joy throughout the Easter season. Reporting for Reel to Reel, this is Terry Hegarty.
That definitely looks like it was a memorable and inspiring pilgrimage for sure, and we're glad that we could help to commemorate the Passion of Jesus, which leads to the joy of Easter. And speaking of pilgrimages, there is still time to sign up for the Catholic Communications pilgrimage to Poland in the footsteps of the soon-to-be newest saint, Blessed John Paul II, this July 16th to the 27th. And I will be going along, and it will be led by Father Gary Daly, director of the Newman Center at UMass in Amherst. For more information, you can find a link on our website at iobserve.org, or you can call and leave your name and contact information on our viewer line at 413-452-0645. That's 413-452-0645. And still to come on Reel to Reel, the Boston Marathon bombings 1 year later. And In Duet with God. These stories and more are still to come on this edition of Reel to Reel from Mark Henry Florist in the Indian Orchard section of Springfield.
The Chalice of Salvation, your weekly spiritual connection. I'm Passionist Brother Terrence Scanlon, your Chalice host, inviting you to take time out and worship with us this Easter Sunday morning at 10 a.m. live from St. Michael's Cathedral. This week we welcome Monsignor Christopher Conley, Vicar General and Rector of St. Michael's Cathedral, as we celebrate the festive and glorious Easter Sunday morning liturgy. The Chalice of Salvation, Sunday morning at 10, right here on 22 News.
The annual Catholic Appeal, continuing the tradition of neighbor helping neighbor, responding to Pope Francis's call to serve with love, serving our brothers and sisters throughout life's journey, caring for the less fortunate, walking with those in need. Make your donation of time, talent, or treasure online at diospringfield.org and help us to help our neighbors in need. Support the annual Catholic Appeal.
Women of the Diocese and beyond will have their time for faith sharing when they come together for the 7th Annual Catholic Women's Conference on Saturday, April 26th at Bellamy School in Chicopee. Noted Catholic author Lisa Henday, founder of CatholicMom.com, will keynote the day. Joining her as speakers will be Sister of St. Joseph Eleanor Spring, group facilitator at Western Mass Regional Women's Correctional Center, whose topic will be The God of Surprises, and author Carrie Weber, managing editor of America Magazine, who will speak about mercy in the city. For more information on the Women's Conference, call 452-0812 or log on to iobserve.org and look for the hot link to the Women's Conference. Sign up now.
I'm Dan Dumas with your Reel-to-Reel News Brief. One of the largest gatherings annually at St. Michael's Cathedral took place last Monday as the Chrism Mass was celebrated.
Celebrating the beginning of the holiest days in the life of the Church, Catholics from the Diocese of Springfield participated in the annual Chrism Mass this past Monday. More than 900 packed into St. Michael's Cathedral in Springfield for the evening liturgy. The key ritual of the Mass involves the bishop blessing the oils that will be used in the diocese for the rest of the year.
And so, Father, by the power of your love, make this mixture of oil and perfume a sign and source of your blessing.
3 types of oils are used for the sacraments in the Church: the oil of chrism, the oil of the sick, and the oil of the catechumens. Hundreds of teenagers preparing for confirmation joined those who will receive their sacraments this weekend as part of the Easter Vigil. Father Doug McGonigal says he wanted to make sure that his confirmation students were present.
But to be able to come here and see all the other kids from all across the diocese who are also preparing for confirmation and to be part of the larger church, I think is so very important.
This was amazing. This church is so beautiful, and I don't know, I'm very happy to be here. I've never been to this church or I don't think any other diocese, so it's really cool.
Ben McKiernan, who will be confirmed this fall, agrees.
I thought it was amazing. I didn't know how the Chrism Mass worked really before tonight, and that was really interesting to see that and kind of be part of it and witness it.
Following the Mass, the oils were distributed to parishes throughout the diocese.
And you can read more on this story online at iobserve.org. Finally, in preparation for Holy Week, the young people at Our Lady of the Blessed Sacrament Parish in Westfield reenacted a famous Last Supper painting. Teens from the Pope John Paul II youth group acted out a living Last Supper recently at Our Lady of the Blessed Sacrament Parish in Westfield. Their performance followed the Stations of the Cross the evening of April 4th. Lisa LaFerrier, leader of the youth group, saw this performance on YouTube and thought it would be a great Lenten activity for her kids. Although the characters do not interact, each individual gets to do a monologue. The group started a year ago, and members are in grades 7 through 12. You can read more on that and stay informed on all the happenings in our diocese by logging onto our news and information website, iobserve.org. There you'll find up-to-the-minute and accurate news in the Catholic Church, both here in the Diocese of Springfield and beyond. You can also see video reports from Reel to Reel and from the award-winning team at the Catholic News Service. That's our news and information website, iobserve.org. I'm Dan Dumas, and that's your Reel to Reel News Brief.
It's been just over a year since the Boston Marathon bombings shattered a festive, world-renowned Boston event, killing 3 and severely injuring dozens. Terry Hegarty traveled to Boston and reflects on the aftermath of the bombings He also tells us about Father Bill Hamilton, a priest of the Diocese of Springfield who served as a chaplain to law enforcement officials in Boston a year ago, and who now, along with his therapy dog, Ted, is helping people cope with the emotional stress associated with such trauma.
It's been more than a year since terrorism struck one of Boston's most popular and beloved events. The Boston Marathon bombings and the frantic manhunt following left 4 dead and hundreds injured. The term Boston Strong, coined after 2 bombs went off near the finish line on Boylston Street, has symbolized the resilience of the people.
For me, Boston Strong means sort of highlighting what America stands for, and that is not allowing fear to determine how you should live or where you should go.
It's almost like a fight to keep yourself not in that mentality where you're kind of always paranoid, but to kind of overcome it but not forget.
Mikhail says that this year's marathon will help people to overcome.
I'm hoping people show up to show that, people have overcome the fear of something like that happening. That's very important.
Not only have security measures here in Boston increased since the 2013 Boston Marathon bombings, so has the resolve of the people here. Area residents are now more determined than ever to stand against such violence. But taking a stand is only part of a healthy response. In addition to the physical tolls, the emotional injuries to many have been just as traumatic. Coping with the stress associated with such violence often requires the help of others. Last year, Reel to Reel traveled to Boston just after the bombings and interviewed Father Bill Hamilton, who was there serving in his role as chaplain for the Massachusetts State Police and the New England region of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Over the last year, Father Bill has traveled to Boston and Watertown to help public safety personnel.
We've been back and forth to Watertown especially with providing continued support. We went 3 months after the bombing, 6 months, and we'll be going back again now that we're coming up to the 1st anniversary.
And sometimes help comes in the form of a furry, 4-legged friend like Father Bill's St. Bernard, Ted. Father Bill has owned the 3-year-old dog for the last 3 months. Ted serves as a therapy dog, comforting people when talking about things may be too much.
He walks in and everybody wants to pet him. Everybody, he loves people, he loves the attention, and he loves loving. I said if I had to do over again, I didn't get to name him. I said I think I would have called him CJ for comfort and joy, because when he comes in, it's all comfort and joy.
Father Bill also serves as chaplain of the Greenfield Police Department and the East Hampton Police and Fire Departments. And while it may seem unusual to see a couple of 140-pound dogs wandering around a public safety complex, Ted is a valued member of the Greenfield Police Department. He also occasionally gets to visit with Clarence, Greenfield Police Officer Laura Gordon's therapy dog. Officer Gordon brought Clarence to Newtown, Connecticut following the Sandy Hook Elementary School shootings. She says that often there are no words to comfort people.
Yeah, when we were in Newtown, Connecticut, there was a lot of silence at times. You're correct, nobody wanted to talk or weren't ready to talk. And what, again, was fascinating is the dogs could sense that. Is sometimes the families, victims, kids, they didn't want to talk to another person. It was easier to talk to a dog. The dog's not going to judge you for what you experience, how you experience, what you're feeling.
Just as people are all different and have their own personalities, so do the canines. And Ted here has demonstrated a clear ability to help other people. Officer Gordon says not all dogs are well suited to this work, but that St. Bernards were bred to help people caught in avalanches.
They don't use them so much for the avalanches anymore, but we like to use them for people that are kind of buried under an avalanche of anxiety.
Father Bill says that this Monday's Boston Marathon will be a celebration and a triumph.
People really want to be there. They want to come out. They're going to say, this is not going to stop us. We're bigger than this. We're stronger than this. We're more resilient than this.
Father Bill is constantly impressed by the dedication and the bravery of public safety personnel.
These people put their lives on the line every single day. And every time they go out of the house, they don't know if they're going to come home. And that's always in the back of their heads. You know, that's always in their minds. It's not talked about that much. But the idea is it is a very dangerous job.
A dangerous job that members of the general public are very grateful such brave individuals are willing to fill, with the help of a few drooling, furry, and loving companions. Reporting for Reel to Reel, this is Terry Hegarty.
We have some sad news to report. Edward Kamuta, founder and president of the Titanic Historical Society in Indian Orchard, died April 13th. He was 74. On July 7, 1963, what would become the Titanic Historical Society was founded by Kamuta and 5 others in Indian Orchard. Kamuta and the THS were involved in both books and television documentaries about the Titanic and her sister ships.
Our family has spanned the centuries and the globe. With God's grace, we started hospitals to care for the sick. We established orphanages and helped the poor. We are the largest charitable organization on the planet, bringing comfort to those in need. We educate more children than any other institution. We developed the scientific method and founded the college system. We defend the dignity of human life and uphold marriage. Guided by the Holy Spirit, we compiled the Bible. We are transformed by sacred scripture and sacred tradition, which have guided us for 2,000 years. We are the Catholic Church, with over 1 billion in our family, sharing in the sacraments and fullness of the Christian faith. Jesus started our church when he said to Peter, the first pope, "You are rock, and upon this rock I will build my church." So if you've been away from the Catholic Church, we invite you to take another look. Visit CatholicsComeHome.org today. We are Catholic. Welcome home.
I'm Carolee McGrath. Next week on Reel to Reel, I'll have the story of a life-changing confirmation retreat in the Berkshires.
You are watching Reel to Reel, your window on the world around you. Here again is your Reel to Reel host, Sharon Ruliger.
And our final story today is a duet of sorts. It's a story of a lifelong friendship, one between music and a musician and her students, a pianist and her saint, all in duet with God.
So I wanted to say too that
Jessica Romisher is an award-winning pianist, composer, writer, and teacher. Born into a musical family, she began playing piano at age 6, always improvising and composing.
I think that when spring starts to happen, it makes us realize that it really is a wonderful world.
She graduated from Princeton, has taught on 4 continents, has interviewed Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and played for the governor. What Jessica is very well known for is her innovative work in music of piano duet improvisation. She makes it possible for everyone, regardless of age, background, or even the presence of a developmental disability, to be able to play music. During an interview in her Berkshire home, Jessica told me her mother, also a gifted pianist, taught her what it really means to create great music.
She would often say, I have no idea why concert pianists play like it's 5 minutes to 5 and they're trying to catch a 5 o'clock bus. Because that's the thing, she said, the space, you have to let the music breathe, you have to let the phrases unfold, you have to allow that space to be. And that is what she's given me.
Jessica and I had a long conversation that day about life, growing up Jewish in Westchester, New York, her parents' divorce when she was a young child, and being raised by a nanny she refers to as her saint. She related this story during a concert at St. Agnes Church in Dalton.
It took me 45 years to realize that I'd been raised by a saint. But as I look back, there were signs along the way. She came to care for me when I was 8, and when I was a young girl, I was soothed by her words of comfort. She's a devout Catholic, and when we were growing up, she would always go, for instance, into her room in the evening and pray her rosary. And we didn't really understand what she was doing, but the feeling of that prayer was a part of my life from the time that I was 8.
For Jessica, faith and music have been intertwined throughout her life.
I like being in a church, and this is kind of a special church for me because something kind of happened here for me that was really quite special. And so I'm going to kind of share with you today how a Jewish girl from Westchester ends up in a Catholic church in Dalton, Mass.
Jessica told me that it was her relationship with her nanny, Flora, whom she also refers to as her other mother, that eventually led her to the Catholic Church. She was baptized 2 years ago at St. Agnes.
And I started to feel that same sense of connection that she had. So for me, baptism was like a continuation and a fruition of everything that had come through from the time when I was very, very young.
She doesn't look at becoming Catholic so much as a conversion, but rather a continuation.
Because Jesus, after all, was Jewish. And that sense of continuation is the most beautiful thing. We don't just spontaneously emerge in life. I mean, we are the product of so much that's become before us. So I feel in some way that I can't even quite describe or get my head around, that I'm part of some kind of very important continuation. So that was the sense that I had when I was called. I felt in myself this compulsion to be baptized.
And Jessica is in the process of finishing her first book, which she has titled In Duet with God, The Story of a Lifelong Friendship. And remember, Jessica Romisher will be playing at Mercy Sunday events at the Divine Mercy Shrine in Stockbridge coming up next weekend. For more information on Jessica, you can find a link on our website at iobserve.org. And remember, as you consider making your donation to the annual Catholic Appeal, remember this television program benefits from contributions to the annual fund drive. In total, 40 agencies and services helping the young and old alike depend on the annual Catholic Appeal. So please consider making your donation, as well as consider answering the call to donate your time and talent to the local church, school, or nonprofit. Answer Pope Francis's call to service by being a neighbor, helping your neighbors in need. And you can make that donation of time, talent, and treasure online through a link at our website at iobserve.org. There you can also keep up to date on all of the news in the Catholic Church of the Diocese of Springfield and around the world, as well as find daily news reports from our local Catholic communications team and the Catholic News Service. That's iobserve.org. Thank you so much in advance for your support of the annual Catholic Appeal. And next week, join us for a special program in anticipation of the canonization of both Blessed John the 23rd and Blessed John Paul II. That's next week right here on Real to Real, your window on the world around you. And a special thanks to Mark Henry Florist for hosting our visit today. Happy Easter.
Real to Real is a production of the Catholic Communications Corporation, funded in part by the annual Catholic Appeal, and the support of you, our faithful viewers.